Hi, it's Christina, and today I want to talk about leading with empathy and what does that really look like? I feel as though that there's a lot of talk about empathy these days and about the way we are leading with empathy, but we really are not following through as to what empathy means. Our actions around empathy will make a bigger difference. Empathy is all a feeling game. It really is linked into your emotional intelligence. It's being able to read a room when no one's speaking. It's the being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and being compassionate and kind, even though you may not have experienced the exact same experience as them. We need leaders to lead with empathy. It does not mean that people are not held accountable. Of course, they're going to be held accountable. You're in a workplace. We have deliverables. We have results that need to be met. However, how we get those results is very different. If we can be compassionate and lead with kindness and have an open mind, that can go a long way. So the way that we need to shift is to be much more supportive, compassionate, collaborative. That this is all leading with empathy. And I'll give you some further tips so we can talk about that. But in the past, it's been more fear-based, right? There's only one way for results. Only one person had all the answers. Leave your issues at the door. We don't care about your emotional state. Those days are gone. But that is the contrast. It's more fear-based, ego-based to leading with empathy. And I think it's important to understand it so you can gauge as to where you are landing. Are you functioning more from a compassionate standpoint, from a leadership perspective, or are you falling into more of a fear-based leadership where it's like, I'm in the position, I'm the smartest one in the room, I have all the answers. It's very ego-based, which we'll talk about that again on another session. So 5 steps, actually 6 steps I have for you to help with leading with empathy. First one, actively listening. So actively listening, what does that mean? That means really listening to individuals from beginning to end, hearing what they really are trying to say to you. Sometimes we have people or leaders that even I've worked with where they're so eager to have the right answer, they will jump in before actually listening to what the concerns are. And they will make assumptions. That is not active listening. Active listening is allowing the flow to really, let individuals get what they need to get out. So statements like, okay, I understand. Oh, thank you. Am I understanding this, right? Sometimes you rephrase it back to them to make sure that you are engaging in that active exchange so people can understand that you're actually listening to them. We may not realize that we could be dismissive to other people when we're so eager about sharing our side of it. That's all ego based. Again, we will talk about ego, but ego wants to win, wants to look like the smartest person. So you got to catch it sometimes because it jumps in and it will not allow someone to finish or what they need to say or allow you to actively listen. So that's one. Second one, you need to proceed without judgment. So anybody that's going through anything, and life is interesting, so there's always going to be something. But if they feel like the other person is judging them based on their situation or circumstances, they are not going to be open with you. And they will, probably close off, and we will not be able to support them the way that we want to from a leadership perspective. Judgment is hard enough when we are even judging ourselves. We do not need it from other people around us. So if there's ways that you can catch yourself, am I operating in a way where this is a judgment-free zone? Do people feel comfortable and inclusive? Do they feel like their diverse thoughts are being included in this situation? Or do they feel as though they will be judged? And I could go on that, but that's my whole thing around inclusion. Because when we talk about that inclusion can only really happen when people don't feel as though they're going to be judged for their perspectives or what they have to share with the world. And the irony is that we need more of that. But if people are fearful that they will be judged, they're not very likely that they're going to proceed that way. So as a leader, are you creating a judgment-free zone in your head? Is this judgment-free? Am I judging? Can I step back and just listen to what the concerns are? I know being in HR, I've heard many things throughout my lifetime, and I really try very hard not to judge, because when you don't judge, there's a beautiful openness. And I will still stand by this. It is in those stories where we have hardship that real great inspiration lies. As long as we can provide space for people to feel as though they can express or they can get the support, and then we work together, more of a collaborative state, not a judgment state, like, oh, you're rejected, you're different, so we're going to put you over here. Well, that is not conducive to a collaborative environment or a highly effective one from a culture perspective, because we talk about inclusion, we talk about all these things. We need to reset the structure to really set that up. So I want you to think about that one. And then number 3 is like understanding. Are you understanding? You know, do you really sit back and try to put yourself in someone else's shoes? Or are you too busy in having the right answer, or you didn't follow this rule, or that doesn't make sense? That is taking away from empathy. Empathy is, again, like I said, putting yourself in someone else's shoes and trying to meet them halfway, at least, or more, to get to some sort of resolve. And I know it's hard from a work perspective, trust me, because I've seen many things, but it does not mean that people are not held accountable. They will be held accountable, but it's how you get there. Are you compassionate about it, or are you just like not even connecting with them? Completely shut out. You don't even care what they have to say. I think everybody has a right to be heard. And, you know, hopefully you can come to some sort of understanding amongst the two of you or group or whatever to move it along effectively. Number 4 is showing empathetic language. So what does that mean? How you speak matters. So if you are just brushing things off, if you're being dismissive, you're cold, you're not very open, and you're only getting it from one perspective, your perspective, that can have a big impact, right? So empathetic language would be like looking at a person when they show up, sitting down with them, nodding, understanding what they have to say. That's empathetic language, because it's the emotions, your body is kind of speaking, you're giving micro clues that you're listening to them, and also how you're speaking. So I know I referred to it before, but like rephrasing things. So you actually are having conversations and listening to them. So, oh, so I just want to make sure I understand this. Did you say this? Right? Or if someone comes in, I might go, help me understand. I'm a little bit confused about this. It's very empathetic. I'm not coming in with full judgment. I'm actually hearing them. But that's the kind of language, empathetic language, right? So it's how we speak, and are we speaking with the proper tone? Are we speaking with the proper body language? Are we engaged? Like one of the brutal ones, I was brutal at this. I would get so caught up in the office, and I would be having a conversation, an email would come in, and I would totally lose focus and get to the email and say to someone like, oh, I'm listening. That's awful. So I've learned from that, like I can't have my email on when I'm engaging in those kind of conversations. That's empathetic language, right? It's actually actions language. Like it's me understanding how I'm speaking and how I'm engaging. I need focus. So I can't have distraction around me. Everybody has different ones, but it's something to think about for yourself. Are you engaging in an effective way? Or are you dismissive and just you don't want to hear it, or you don't care? So just keep that in play. Number 5 is practicing mindfulness. So mindfulness is super important. That is how you connect with yourself. So many times when I'm doing coaching, a lot of people don't have mindfulness practices and they're like, oh, I know it's something I should do. It is mandatory for yourself in order to really be connected to empathy. You have to have care for yourself before you can start really helping other people. It's kind of like your cup needs to be full. If you're pouring tea in your cup, it's got to be full before you start pouring into other people. Because if not, you're going to drain yourself pretty quickly. So there's many different ways that you can do that. You can do meditation, you can do journaling, you can do yoga, you could exercise, you can hang out with your pet. There's so many things, but those mindfulness practices are really sacred because it's about you connecting with yourself. So you're fully charged and you can be fully engaged on a completely different level with yourself and your team, even your family, your friends. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't necessarily have to be an organization. It's just, this is something that I think people sell themselves short. And it is probably one of the most important things in order to get you completely rebalanced. And it should be something that is non-negotiable. And even if it's only like 20 minutes a day, that's your 20 minutes in order to have your mindfulness practice. Okay. There's so many things I can go into that, but I will refrain from going into the whole thing because I can go into a whole other episode on mindfulness. Then the last one I have, are you open-minded or are you very close-minded? Is there only one way to do things? Well, if you're empathetic, you have to be open-minded. You have to be able to kind of go, okay, I'm understanding where you're coming from. I don't necessarily see it, but I understand where you're coming from. I can connect. Maybe we can meet halfway, something. But if you were closed-minded and really, it ends up being judgmental. Like if you catch yourself where you're very closed-minded, it's one way, then you become judgmental, then you become like you'll criticize, you may even start gossiping because people aren't doing things properly. It is not good stuff. It is the opposite to leading with empathy. Leading with empathy is understanding that we are all different and unique, but we all have certain things that are so connected, even though we come from different backgrounds and different places, which is amazing to me. Like there's universal language. Universal language is like love, compassion, kindness. It doesn't matter where you sit in the world. We all we understand that, as well as, fear, anger. We understand those emotions as well. But we're trying to get people to lead with empathy. So they're leaning in the more positive realm. Now, I will say this, but this is a little more complex, but you have to understand the more contrast emotions in order to really thrive in the positive ones. Like, you can't have happiness if you haven't had sadness. It's a very simple way of putting it, because if that's the case, it's not full. It's not to the full potential. And we're trying to get you to lean into empathy in all parts of your life. It is not just for work. And when you understand as an individual, as you lead into empathy, everything will rebalance and you will bring in other great things into your life because you're not engaging in this fear-based, ego-based space, which is not healthy, especially from a leadership perspective. Once you start having that more open state of mind, really great things can come in. So those are some tips. There's many, but we'll just start with that. Those are some tips to get you started with leading with empathy, why it's really important. And if this resonates, give a follow, because I'll share more about how to build this muscle and why it's so important, because I want you to live your best life and I want you to be the best possible leader out there without trying to be a leader. This just all comes from a natural place. It all comes from you. So I want you to keep that in mind. If you like this, subscribe, give me a follow, and we will chat soon. Talk to you later. Bye.